And I was basically at that time raising the issue of environmental consciousness. Let's look at alternatives to oil. In 2005, I wrote again after the energy companies reported the highest quarterly profits in the history of reporting of quarterly profits, when Exxon reported over 10 billion for one quarter. And I got dressed up as Paul Revere and basically was repeating the theme, again going back to the Founding Fathers, of basically no taxation without representation.
Right.
And we don't have any representation in Washington. And then I did it again a couple weeks ago because now the energy companies have reported the highest profits ever of 120 billion in 2007, net after all taxes.
And we're still giving them money.
And
we still give them money.
And nobody's protesting or objecting.
Yeah.
And to me, and being that I live in Hong Kong and China, and I'm always being asked to comment on the American political scene from the perspective of an American living in China, being that it's an election here, I wanted to point out, stop China bashing. It's not China's fault that energy prices are high. It's the oil companies' fault. It's the Arab oil producing countries. Let's put the blame where it belongs and not try and pull a political spin, which is what my first book basically addressed, because the book you are holding is volume 2 of a trilogy.
Okay.
The first volume was Custom Made Spin. This is Custom Made Knowledge. And the next one is Custom Made Apathy. And everything I'm leading to is why we Americans have to get active and start taking back the political process, the political system, the way the Founding Fathers did. I mean, a little bit of history, which a lot of people don't realize, is why did the Founding Fathers pick Washington as the capital? It wasn't just because it's between the North and South Mason-Dixon line. It's because it has swamps, is very humid, and the dirtiest, most terrible place to be in America. So they wanted to make sure that when politicians went to Washington, they hated it so much they never came back again. And it worked.
It worked.
Until the 1920s, when air conditioning was invented.
Right. Yeah.
That's when personal income tax came, the code was adopted. Why? Because now they said, you know what, this place can be pretty nice. Let's figure out how we can make this a career and spend more time here and get the people to pay for it. So all of a sudden, state rights, people's rights, were just gradually over the last, almost 100 years taken away from us.
Right.
And we, the maids, have allowed it to happen. So the point I'm trying to get to, and why I refer to us as maids, it's time for us to sweep back in the founding principles of our great founding fathers and sweep out all the changes the career politicians have taken.
Peter, I didn't expect you when I was reading your Mary Catherine sent me something this morning, and I looked at it and I said, okay, another Yahoo on a horse, and here he has something to say. But I'm very impressed with you.
Oh, thank you.
Only because you sound a lot like me. And Devo and my other two co-hosts, they know I try to tame my political reasoning, only because at some point we live in a world of technology, and you never know. And I'm not into conspiracies, but I've read so much about it because I've had some friends that are always waving a different flag. And it is an American flag, but it's upside down, asking people to come and help us. We're being hijacked here, or being that this is the best country in the world, why is it that we're suffering so much here in so many ways, with poverty and health care, and just so many things are being stripped of human dignity. And as much as I told my folks out there how wonderful it is to be able to let the universe help you in every sense of the word. I mean, I believe in prayer, and I say, just give me the strength to carry on and help me help others. And just that little prayer makes all the things that I need come. But we're looking at such a massive undertaking where the only person, and I'm not, again, political, I'm apolitical, is what Obama has done with the youth. I mean, he has like stirred it up to a point that, boy, I have never seen something like this since Kennedy, really. People liked what he looked like, what he stood for. He was different. Usually the politicians are old, bald-headed guys in the past, or just nerdy-looking, you know, guys that had nothing other than, you know, to pound something in you. These two individuals are trying to empower America. Who knows what's going to happen in the next year. But that's another thing. Getting off a little bit here, we have another 6 months of battling before we're going to see, you know, the people go to the polls. What's going to happen in 6 months, literally?
I think you're seeing the beginning of what I have been writing about for the last 5 years, which is a new American Revolution.
Yes. Wow. Yes.
And it can get bloody. I'm hoping it won't get bloody. But even going back to custom-made spin, I addressed the point you just raised about why are Americans so apathetic, and what is it going to take to get young people to register to vote, and why is it that more Americans vote for American Idol than they do about what is really important in their lives.
Interesting.
And what I think is going to happen the next 6 months, which we're already seeing, is a major transformation of the American political process and system. Because if you take any of the scenarios, and I believe Obama will be the Democratic nominee unless something you know, that is unforeseen happens. And I think the polarization that will take place in America as a result, because the fact is America is racist.
Totally.
And I address that in both books. And
that's interesting for a white man to say that. Congratulations.
Well, I've been saying it
tip
for
my hat to
I've
you.
been saying that for, and I'm glad it is being brought up now, because I've been writing about it for years. And you know, that is a political issue that has been at the very root of America, going back to John Adams. And what Adams even did to
it. He had no slaves.
Exactly, but what he did to address the issue. And one of the things I point out in this book is, again, getting back to education, is that most Americans think that slavery was just an issue in the South. There were more slaves in New York City at the founding of this country than many parts of America. 1 in 5 residents of New York City was a slave. And recently, even a lot of the excavations around Ground Zero, finding all these forgotten slave cemeteries. People forget that Wall Street was built by slaves. But then going back to actually the American Revolution, it was the Brits who were encouraging slaves to come fight on their side for freedom. And then after the Americans won the war, they wanted the Brits to hand over all the slaves that fought on the British side. And the Brits, to their credit, honored their commitment. They said no, and they sent them all to Canada. But they would not turn them over. So one of the things I emphasize on custom-made knowledge is, let's look at America's history so we can understand why we are what we are today. And that's the only way we're going to get rid of racism, is if we understand what every race has actually contributed to this great country. It is not just a country created by white people. It is a country that was built by Native Americans, by African Americans, Latinos, and every hue of the rainbow.
But they had no power. They truly had no power.